Babe, I am so ready for the company party tonight. Finally, we get to show up together out in the open. No more having to cook up some lame excuse to leave Jade at home. Jade Adams read those words on her husband's phone, and in a matter of seconds, her entire world imploded. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of blindly believing Clay was shielding her from those stuffy company parties because he loved her so much. 8 years of being the quintessential wife, smart, supportive, and selflessly putting her own promising career on hold to help him chase his dreams. But right there, at that exact moment, as she stared at that message he'd fired off to Isla, his ridiculously young and identical twin-like 24-year-old secretary, one brutal truth became crystal clear in Jade's brilliant mind. She wasn't the protected wife at all. She was the hidden wife. Clay wasn't worried about embarrassing her at those parties. He was plain old ashamed of her. Standing there, looking out the window of their swanky London penthouse, watching life go on, business as usual way down below, Jade made up her mind. And that decision would change everything. If Clay was so determined to keep her in the shadows, then she was going to make herself impossible to ignore. If he actually believed he could just swap her out for some clueless young thing, then he was about to get a harsh lesson in just how badly he'd underestimated the woman he married. After all, revenge is a dish best served ice cold. And Jade had all the time in the world to whip up the ultimate feast. At the next company party, the one where Clay was planning to finally parade Isla around as his brand new arm candy, he was in for the surprise of his life. Because Jade Adams, that simple woman he was so mortified to show off, was on the verge of transforming into his worst freaking nightmare. The game was officially on. And this time, Jade was calling all the shots. Make sure you subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. The discovery. The London sun beat down on the windows of their penthouse apartment in Shoreditch with no mercy. But Jade was so consumed, she barely registered the heat. Her dark eyes, normally so full of life and sparkle, were glued to the screen of the cell phone, which was trembling in her delicate hands. The messages she'd just stumbled upon on Clay's phone hit her like a series of gut punches. Babe, I am so ready for the company party tonight. We can finally show up together, out in the open. Isla, her husband's secretary, had written. Me too, my love. This time, I don't have to cook up some lame excuse to leave Jade at home. Clay, the man she'd built the last 8 years of her life with, had replied. Jade squeezed her eyes shut, feeling like the world was disintegrating all around her. How many times had Clay droned on and on about how those company parties were strictly business, how they'd be a total bore for her, how he just wanted to protect her from the cutthroat corporate types. How many times had she fallen for it, even feeling a little smug about having such a considerate husband. Now it all snapped into sickening focus. The constant business trips, the hushed phone calls, that unfamiliar perfume clinging to his clothes, those nights when he stumbled in way too late for any legitimate business meeting. Clay hadn't been protecting her. He'd been hiding her. The 29-year-old woman slowly pushed herself up from the buttery Italian leather sofa they'd picked out together on their honeymoon in Milan. Her bare feet made contact with the icy marble floor as she drifted toward the balcony, which offered a sweeping, panoramic view of the entire city. Down below, life went on like nothing had happened. Car horns blared, people rushed by, street vendors hawked their wares. Like her world hadn't just imploded. Jade was everything any man could ever want. A law graduate from the London School of Economics with a specialization in corporate law from the University of Barcelona. She'd walked away from a super-promising career to stand by Clay when he decided to blow up his import business. Her beauty was striking and totally natural. Thick black hair cascaded down her shoulders in soft waves. Her fair skin was a perfect canvas for her almond-shaped eyes, and she had a smile that could light up any room. But more than just her looks, it was her razor-sharp intelligence that always turned heads. Jade possessed an analytical and strategic mind that had been instrumental in Clay's business empire, even though he'd never publicly acknowledged her contributions. She dissected contracts, sniffed out legal loopholes, and suggested market expansions, all from behind the scenes. Always behind the scenes. Now, as she stood there, taking in the London skyline, Jade could feel a transformation rumbling inside her. The white-hot pain of betrayal was hardening into something different, something far more potent. It wasn't just garden-variety rage. It was a fierce determination, a burning hunger for justice that made her blood boil and her mind race at warp speed. She went back inside the apartment and really looked at every single detail around her. The Frida Kahlo painting she'd been so drawn to, the furniture she'd lovingly hand-selected, the books in her personal library, arranged with meticulous care. This was her home, her life, and Clay had waltzed right in and stomped all over it. Her phone vibrated, signaling a message from her best friend, Carmen. "Jade, honey, I just saw a picture on Instagram from Clay's company party. You didn't go?" He was with some woman. Jade didn't need to see the picture to know exactly who that woman was. Isla, the blonde, barely legal-seeming 24-year-old Clay, had hired as his executive assistant a mere 6 months ago. The same one who always plastered on a way-too-big smile whenever Jade popped into the office, who always made a point of flaunting her intimacy with Clay's personal life. But this time, things were about to get very, very different. Jade was done being the naive little wifey who stayed at home while her husband partied it up with his mistress. She'd just unearthed a little secret that they had no idea she knew. The annual British Importers Association party was scheduled for the following week at the Savoy Hotel, the most important event on Clay's entire business calendar, where he was hoping to seal some multi-million-pound deals with international investors. A slow, calculated smile crept across Jade's lips. She knew every single detail of Clay's business inside and out, every client, every supplier, every financial maneuver. After all, who did they think had been organizing all those documents, whipping up the presentations, and meticulously reviewing all those contracts? She was the real brains behind the entire Clay Imports operation. That night, while Clay was working late, code for canoodling with Isla, Jade locked herself away in her personal office. The walls were plastered with her diplomas and certifications, achievements she'd put on the back burner to support her husband. Now they were about to become her weapons. She fired up her laptop and got right down to business. First, she needed a crystal-clear picture of Clay's exact strategy for the party. She slipped into his corporate email account, a password she'd known for years, and started mapping out every meeting, every presentation, every VIP who would be there. Then, she launched her own investigation. She dialed up old contacts from college, former colleagues from her internship days at fancy law firms, and suppliers she'd gotten to know in the early years of her marriage. Jade was meticulously building her own network, setting the stage for what was about to come. The hours flew by. When Clay finally stumbled in at 3 o'clock in the morning, he found his wife sleeping soundly in bed. Little did he know she'd spent the entire night plotting his downfall. In the days that followed, Jade went through the motions of her normal routine. She made Clay breakfast, asked about his day, and even feigned interest in his endless stories about important meetings. But inside, she was strategizing like a chess grandmaster, already thinking several moves ahead. She knew that revenge was a dish best served ice cold, and she had all the patience in the world. Clay and Isla had seriously underestimated the wrong woman. They were about to find out that Jade was so much more than just a trophy wife. She was a force of nature. When the night of the party finally arrived, Clay's whole world would come crashing down around him, and Jade would be front and center to savor every single second of his humiliation. The first move of the game was officially underway, and she already had a serious head start. What would you do if you discovered a betrayal like this? Would you confront him right then and there, or would you meticulously plot your revenge? Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. The plan. A week had ticked by since the devastating discovery, and Jade had undergone a complete transformation. On the outside, she stuck to the same old routine. She woke up early, brewed coffee, and sent Clay off with a peck on the cheek. But inside, a war machine was humming at full speed. On that particular Tuesday morning, while Clay was belting out a tune in the shower, probably daydreaming about Isla, Jade was holed up in her private office, putting the final touches on her master plan. She'd spent countless nights dissecting her husband's every move, every behavioral tick, and every weakness she could possibly exploit. Her first move had been brilliantly simple. Jade had tracked down Helen Vasquez, London's most sought-after corporate event planner. Helen was famous for her impeccable connections and her legendary discretion. Exactly what Jade needed. Mrs. Adams, Helen had purred during their meeting at a discreet cafe in Notting Hill. I understand your situation perfectly. So many women go through exactly what you're going through, and yes, I can definitely help you. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Helen would secure Jade a VIP invitation to the British Importers Association party, not as Clay's wife, but as a representative of some fictitious group of European investors who were super interested in the Latin American market. The identity would be flawlessly constructed with forged documents and everything, something Helen had already done for other clients in similar situations. But Jade wasn't stopping there. She'd stumbled upon something that made everything even juicier. Ricardo Mendoza, Clay's biggest rival in the import game, was also going to be at the party. Ricardo was a suave and successful 55-year-old who had always shown a subtle interest in Jade at the few social gatherings they'd both attended. Over the past few days, Jade had strategically run into Ricardo at a few key spots around the city. First, at Starbucks, where she conveniently forgot her wallet, and he gallantly paid for her coffee. Then, at the Tate Modern, where they'd had a stimulating conversation about the contemporary art exhibit. Ricardo was intelligent, cultured, and clearly smitten. You have such a unique perspective on art, Jade, he'd said as they stood in front of a piece by Gabriella Roscoe. It's a shame Clay doesn't share your cultural interests. Ricardo's words had planted a seed. He knew Clay well enough to know that Jade's husband didn't fully appreciate her intelligence and sophistication. And now, that little nugget of information was about to become crucial to the next phase of her plan. That afternoon, Jade finally got the call she'd been waiting for. It was Carmen, her best friend, who worked as a society columnist for one of London's biggest magazines. Jade, I got the intel you wanted, Carmen whispered. Isla Herrera, 24 years old, business degree from the University of London. She's been working at Clay's company for 6 months. And yes, she'll be at the party as his official guest. Official? Jade echoed, feeling a twinge of pain that quickly morphed into pure, unadulterated determination. Yeah, honey, from what I hear, Clay's even registered her as his business partner for the event. Apparently, he's planning to introduce her to all the international investors. Jade's blood ran cold. Clay wasn't just cheating on her behind closed doors. He was publicly replacing her, parading Isla around like she was some vital part of his business when Jade was the one who had actually built the damn thing from the ground up. But this information only solidified her resolve. If Clay wanted to play dirty, she was ready to play even dirtier. That night, after Clay left for one of his late meetings, Jade put phase 2 of her plan into action. She phoned Miguel Santos, one of London's most respected corporate lawyers. Miguel had been her professor back in her university days and had kept in touch over the years. Jade, what a pleasant surprise to hear from you. Miguel had sounded genuinely delighted. How are things? I still think it's a shame you left the legal field. You were one of the sharpest minds I ever taught. Miguel, I need your help with something kind of sensitive, Jade replied. Could we possibly meet tomorrow? It's about a rather complex business matter. The meeting was set for the following day at Miguel's elegant office in the West End. When Jade arrived, wearing an impeccably tailored black suit that accentuated her elegant figure and innate sense of authority, Miguel couldn't hide his admiration. You look absolutely radiant, Jade. What can I do for you? Jade laid out her situation with the cool detachment of a seasoned negotiator. She didn't mention the messy details of the betrayal. That would be irrelevant to the legal aspects. Instead, she stuck to the facts. She wanted to get a clear understanding of her rights as a spouse regarding the family business, especially considering her significant, but totally unrecognized contributions to the company's growth. Interesting, Miguel murmured, scribbling notes. Do you have any documentation to back up those contributions? Jade smiled. For the past 8 years, she'd meticulously squirreled away copies of every contract she'd reviewed, every market analysis she'd prepared, and every business strategy she'd devised. Clay had never even suspected she was doing this. He just assumed she was helping out a little, and then promptly forgot about it. I have everything documented, Miguel. Every email, every file, every contribution. Clay never imagined I was keeping such detailed records. Miguel's eyes lit up with professional curiosity. Jade, this is pure gold. With this kind of documentation, we can prove a substantial intellectual contribution to the business. If something were to happen to your marriage. Something may be about to happen, Jade interjected softly. Meanwhile, across town, Clay was enjoying an intimate dinner with Isla at some fancy restaurant, plotting how they were going to make their grand debut as a couple at the party next week. Little did they know that their every move was being carefully observed and catalogued by Jade. Babe, you'll see how amazing it's going to be, Isla gushed, twirling her blonde hair around her finger. We can finally be a real couple, out in the open. Yes, my love, Clay replied, reaching across the table to hold her hand. After the party, I'm going to sit down with Jade and tell her I want a divorce. I just can't keep living this lie anymore. If they'd only known that Jade had already uncovered everything and was busy orchestrating their public annihilation, they might not have been smiling with such smug confidence. The next morning, Jade woke up feeling a surge of power she hadn't felt in years. Today was the day she would start putting the final phase of her plan into motion. She slipped into a navy blue dress that made her eyes pop, applied flawless makeup, and pulled her hair back into an elegant bun. When Clay came down for coffee, he found his wife looking more stunning than ever. You look beautiful today, Jade, he mumbled, but his voice sounded distracted. His mind was clearly somewhere else, or rather with someone else. Thank you, darling, she replied with a serene smile. I have a pretty important meeting today. A meeting? Clay looked surprised. It had been months since Jade had even hinted at any professional engagements. Yeah, I'm thinking about getting back into the workforce. Maybe it's time I dusted off my career. Clay practically choked on his coffee. The thought of Jade re-entering the job market clearly rattled him. An independent wife would definitely throw a wrench into his plans with Isla. But darling, there's absolutely no need. I take care of everything, remember? I know, love, Jade said, planting a kiss on his forehead. But a woman needs to feel useful, don't you think? After Clay headed off to work, Jade allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. In just a few days, at the most important party of her husband's entire career, she was going to emerge as the freaking hurricane he never saw coming. The revenge was taking shape, and it was going to be sweeter than she ever imagined. Do you think Clay and Isla deserve what's about to happen to them? The gala. Only 3 days stood between Jade and the British Importers Association party, and she was laser-focused on putting the finishing touches on her complete and utter transformation. She'd spent the entire morning at one of London's most exclusive salons, where a team of professionals worked to elevate her natural beauty to a level that was breathtaking. Her dark hair now cascaded in perfect, luxurious waves that framed her face in a way that was downright cinematic. The makeup, applied by a celebrity artist, highlighted her almond-shaped eyes in a way that was both elegant and utterly hypnotic. Her nails, painted in a shade of red that screamed power, completed the physical transformation. But the real change wasn't just skin deep. It was internal. Jade had rediscovered the fierce confidence she'd lost somewhere along the way during her marriage. Now, when she looked in the mirror, she saw the brilliant, determined woman she'd been before Clay ever re-entered the picture. Her first stop after the salon was at Paloma Herrera's boutique, home to one of Mexico's most celebrated designers. Jade had booked a private appointment to hand-select the dress she would wear to the party, a piece that needed to scream power, elegance, and a very clear message that she was no longer the submissive little wife everyone thought she was. Mrs. Adams, it's such a pleasure to see you again. Paloma greeted her with a warm smile. I heard you were looking for something special. Very special, Jade confirmed. I need a dress that makes an entrance no one will ever forget. Paloma, who had dressed everyone from first ladies to international A-listers, understood the mission immediately. I think I have exactly what you're looking for. The dress was nothing short of a masterpiece. an exclusive design crafted from emerald green Italian silk that was a perfect match for Jade's complexion. The cut was impeccable, elegant enough for the corporate setting, but with just a hint of sensuality that would guarantee all eyes would be glued to her. The piece cost the equivalent of 3 employees' monthly salaries, but Jade didn't even hesitate. After all, she had helped build the fortune she was now about to use for her revenge. "It's perfect," she murmured, gazing at herself in the mirror. "Absolutely perfect." Meanwhile, a few blocks away, Clay was holed up in his office, trying to focus on work, but his mind was completely consumed by thoughts of Isla. He'd spent the morning blowing up her phone with messages, plotting every little detail of their big debut at the party. "Babe, I bought a light pink dress for the party," Isla had written. "Do you think I'll look good in it?" "You'd look beautiful in a potato sack, my love," Clay had replied. "I can't wait to introduce you to everyone as my partner." What Clay didn't realize was that Jade had access to all of their little lovey-dovey conversations. Over the past few days, she discreetly installed spyware on his phone, a skill she'd picked up during her studies in digital law. Every message, every plan, every move they made was known to her before it even happened. That afternoon, Jade had her final meeting with Helen Vasquez to hammer out the details of her fake identity for the party. Helen had created a truly convincing persona. Jade would be introduced as Jade Montenegro, a representative of a consortium of European investors looking to expand their business ventures into Latin America. "All the documents are ready to go," Helen explained, handing her an elegant folder. "Your business cards, credentials for the fake company, even a professional-looking website we created. You'll be one of the most sought-after people at the party. Oh, and about those contacts you mentioned. Yes. Ricardo Mendoza has already confirmed he'll be there, and I may have casually dropped the fact that a very interesting female investor would also be in attendance." He seemed very intrigued. "I also spoke with a few economic journalists. They'll be there to cover all the big deals, but they're always on the lookout for new and beautiful faces." Jade smiled. Everything was falling into place with meticulous precision. That night at dinner, Jade was watching Clay like a hawk. He was visibly jumpy, constantly checking his phone, and generally seemed distant. The impending party and the thought of finally going public with Isla were clearly making him a nervous wreck. "You seem a little preoccupied, darling," Jade commented casually, delicately slicing the salmon on her plate. "Oh, it's just work. You know how these corporate parties are, a ton of pressure, a lot of important business to discuss, I imagine." "So, you're going alone?" For a split second, Clay hesitated. Jade could practically see the internal battle raging in his eyes. Part of him wanted to just come clean and tell her the truth, but the other part still didn't have the guts. "Yeah, I'm going alone. You know you hate those things." "True," Jade agreed, taking a sip of wine. "But sometimes I wonder if maybe I should force myself to get more involved in your professional life. After all, we're a team, aren't we?" The irony dripped from her voice, but it flew right over Clay's head, as he was too busy firing off a text to Isla under the table. Later that night, after Clay had finally drifted off to sleep, Jade locked herself in her office to do one last sweep of her plan. She'd created a detailed timeline of exactly how everything would unfold at the party. 7:30 p.m. Clay and Isla arrive at the event. Jade's arrival as Jade Montenegro. 8:15 p.m. Initiate first strategic contact with Ricardo Mendoza. 8:30 p.m. Begin gradual approach toward the business circles where Clay will be. 9 p.m. The moment of sweet, sweet revelation. Every single minute was mapped out with military precision. Jade knew exactly where Clay would be at any given moment, who he'd be talking to, and what deals he'd be trying to cut. After all, she'd been orchestrating his entire agenda for years. Jade's phone buzzed, signaling a message from Carmen. "Honey, I just got some more intel." Isla's been telling all her friends that she's making her big debut as Clay's official girlfriend at the party. She even posted a picture on her Instagram story of her trying on dresses with the caption, "Special night coming." Jade sighed. Isla's naivete was almost endearing. The young woman truly believed that Clay would just ditch Jade for her without any consequences. that she could simply waltz in and assume the position of wife without putting up a fight. She was about to get a harsh lesson in just how badly she had underestimated the woman she was trying to replace. The next morning, Jade woke up with a sense of absolute calm washing over her. All the anxiety, all the pain, and all the uncertainty of the past few days had hardened into a cold, calculated determination. She made Clay breakfast for the very last time as a deceived wife. Starting tomorrow, everything was going to be very, very different. When he came downstairs, he found her looking more radiant than ever. "Good morning, love," she said, pouring his coffee exactly the way he liked it. "Good morning. Wow, you look gorgeous today." "Thank you. Oh, by the way, I'm going out with Carmen tomorrow night, dinner and a movie. You don't mind, do you?" "Of course not. Have fun." Clay could barely contain his relief. If Jade was busy with her friend, he wouldn't have to dream up any more elaborate excuses for stumbling home late after the party with Isla. After he left, Jade allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Tomorrow night, Clay was going to discover that he had completely underestimated the woman he married. And Isla was about to learn that some positions in life can't be won with just youth and naivete. The revenge was down to its final 24 hours of preparation. And it was going to be devastatingly perfect. Like this video if you're totally on Team Jade. The showdown. The Grand Ballroom at the Savoy Hotel had never hosted an event quite as glamorous and high-stakes as the annual British Importers Association party. The massive hall was dripping with exotic floral arrangements, dazzling crystal chandeliers, and boasted a panoramic view of the London skyline that was absolutely breathtaking. The most powerful and influential players in the British business world mingled, glasses of French champagne in hand, nibbling on gourmet canapés crafted by the hotel's executive chef. Right on cue at 7:30 p.m., Clay arrived at the event with Isla draped on his arm. She looked radiant in a light pink dress that accentuated her youthful beauty. Her blonde hair cascaded in gentle waves over her shoulders. Clay, looking impeccable in his black tuxedo, smiled with the smug confidence of a man who could finally flaunt his prize in public. "Nervous, my love?" he murmured in Layla's ear as they handed over their invitations at the reception. "A little," she confessed, squeezing his arm. "But I'm happy. I can finally be by your side, as your true woman." Clay beamed and delicately kissed her hand. "Today is our first official day as a couple, the first of many," he thought. They were greeted with enthusiasm by the other business attendees. Clay introduced Layla as his new business partner and strategic consultant, titles that brought a smile of pride to the young woman's face. She didn't catch the curious and faintly malicious glances from some of the wives present, experienced women who immediately recognized the power dynamics at play. Meanwhile, just a few feet away, Jade was putting the final touches on her transformation. She gazed at herself in the full-length mirror of her walk-in closet and barely recognized the woman staring back. The Paloma Herrera emerald green dress had turned her into a modern-day goddess, elegant, powerful, and utterly breathtaking. Her hair was swept back into a sophisticated low bun, with a few carefully placed strands framing her face. The makeup was flawless, her eyes emphasized with a perfectly winged eyeliner. Her lips were painted in a nude shade that highlighted the natural beauty of her mouth. Her jewelry was understated, yet undeniably expensive. Diamond earrings that had been a gift from Clay on their 3rd wedding anniversary, and a pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. "Perfect," she murmured to herself, adjusting the dress one last time. "It's time to show them who I really am." At precisely 7:45 p.m. Jade slipped into the back of the Mercedes-Benz that Helen had rented for the occasion. The driver, discreetly informed of the importance of being on time, navigated the London streets with the precision of a seasoned professional. During the ride, Jade meticulously ran through every detail of her plan in her mind. She knew exactly where Clay would be at 8:15 p.m. At the main bar, deep in conversation with representatives from the Japanese company, Tanaka Industries, trying to finalize a deal he had been pursuing for months. She also knew that Isla would likely be by his side, smiling and nodding blankly, clearly out of her depth in the complex discussions about international logistics and customs regulations. At 8:10 p.m. The Mercedes glided to a stop in front of the Savoy. Jade took a deep, steadying breath, straightened her posture, and emerged from the car with the poise of a queen. The doorman, completely awestruck by her elegance, practically stumbled as he opened the door for her. "Good evening, madam," he stammered. "Welcome to the Savoy." "Thank you," Jade replied with a smile that was both kind and commanding. She walked into the hotel and headed towards the elevator that would take her to the party floor. In the elevator mirror, she gave her lipstick one last touch-up and allowed herself a small anticipatory smile. In just a few minutes, the most important performance of her life would begin. The elevator doors slid open on the party floor, and Jade made her grand entrance. The effect was instantaneous. Conversations came to an abrupt halt, heads swiveled, and hushed whispers rippled through the crowd as people wondered who the stunning woman who had just arrived was. Helen, strategically positioned near the entrance, approached her immediately. "Jade Montenegro," she announced, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "What a pleasure to see you. How was your flight from Barcelona?" "Excellent, thank you," Jade responded in flawless English, but with a subtle accent that Helen had suggested to make the assumed identity more convincing. "I'm very excited to meet the British businessman. I've heard wonderful things about the local market." Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, Clay was exactly where Jade had predicted, animatedly talking with the Tanaka Industries executives. Isla stood beside him, smiling and nodding occasionally, clearly struggling to follow the technical discussions about international logistics and customs regulations. Mr. Martin, Hiroshi Tanaka, the regional director, was saying, "We are impressed with your proposal, but we need assurances regarding your company's capability to handle larger volumes." "Absolutely, Mr. Tanaka," Clay replied with confidence. "Our infrastructure has recently undergone significant expansion, and we have strategic partnerships in place that allow us to—" He trailed off mid-sentence. His eyes had caught a glimpse of movement across the room. A woman in a green dress who was effortlessly capturing the attention of everyone around her. There was something undeniably familiar about her, something that made his heart pound in his chest in a way he couldn't quite understand. "Excuse me for a moment," he murmured, handing his business card to Tanaka. "Isla, please continue the conversation. I'll be right back." Isla, looking confused but compliant, tried to maintain a smile as Clay walked away, clearly captivated by something, or someone, across the room. On the other side of the hall, Jade was being introduced to Ricardo Mendoza, precisely according to plan. The businessman, impeccably dressed in his own tuxedo, couldn't hide his admiration for the enigmatic European investor. "Miss Montenegro," Ricardo said, delicately kissing her hand. "It's a genuine pleasure to meet you. Helen mentioned that you represent a consortium interested in expanding into Latin America." "That's correct, Mr. Mendoza. We are always seeking out partnerships with visionary entrepreneurs," Jade replied, her eyes twinkling with intelligence that captivated Ricardo. "I've heard great things about your company. Perhaps we could explore potential collaboration opportunities." "That would be an honor. Allow me to introduce you to some of my colleagues in the sector." As Ricardo expertly guided her through the hall, Jade kept a watchful eye on Clay. She could see him slowly making his way over, visibly intrigued by her presence. The plan was unfolding flawlessly. "Ricardo," she said softly, "isn't that Clay Martin from Clay Imports over there? I've heard quite a bit about his company." "Ah yes, Clay is a competitor," Ricardo replied with a slightly sardonic smile. "A competent businessman, I must admit, although his methods are sometimes questionable." "How so?" "Well, we recently discovered that he has been using privileged information obtained through, shall we say, unconventional sources. Nothing illegal, mind you, but certainly ethically dubious." Jade feigned surprise, although she was intimately familiar with what Ricardo was referring to. It was, in fact, one of the strategies she had originally devised for Clay years ago, using personal connections to gain access to bid information before it was made public. At the time, it had seemed like a clever tactic. Now it would become yet another weapon in her arsenal. Just then, Clay finally drew close enough to get a clear view of the mysterious woman's face. When their eyes met, his entire world seemed to freeze. It was Jade, his wife. But it wasn't the Jade he knew. This woman radiated power, confidence, and a sophisticated allure he had never witnessed in her before. For a fleeting moment, he was paralyzed, unable to comprehend how his formerly submissive and domestic wife had morphed into this captivating goddess who commanded the undivided attention of the entire room. "Jade!" he whispered in disbelief, taking a hesitant step forward. "Excuse me," she replied, feigning confusion with an Oscar-worthy performance. "I believe you must have me confused with someone else. I'm Jade Montenegro, a representative of the Barcelona Investment Consortium." Ricardo observed the interaction with growing interest. "You two know each other?" Clay stammered, utterly bewildered. "Sorry, she just bears a striking resemblance to someone I know." Jade smiled with calculated coolness. "Oh, how intriguing. You must be Clay Martin from Clay Imports. I've heard a great deal about your company. Ricardo here was just telling me about the innovative methods you employ." The word innovative carried a subtle undercurrent that made Clay's skin crawl. There was something in those eyes, his wife's eyes, that warned him something was terribly wrong. "Jade, what are you doing here?" he whispered, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, but you continue to mistake me for someone else. Perhaps we should focus on business. I heard you were attempting to finalize a contract with Tanaka Industries." Clay's blood ran ice cold. How did she know about the deal with the Japanese? It was confidential information he had only shared with one person. His eyes darted back to Isla, who was still on the other side of the room, attempting to keep the conversation flowing with the Japanese executives. Suddenly, everything began to click into place. Jade knew. Somehow, his wife had discovered everything. "Ricardo," Jade continued, her voice as smooth as silk, but as sharp as a razor. "You mentioned something about questionable methods. Could you elaborate? As an investor, I need to fully understand the ethical standards of the companies we are considering doing business with." Ricardo, relishing the opportunity to undermine his competitor in front of a potential investor, grinned. "Well, there are rumors circulating that Clay Imports obtains information about bids through, shall we say, intimate relationships with employees of public companies." Jade gasped, feigning shock. "Intimate relationships? What kind of relationships? The kind that could compromise the impartiality of certain business decisions?" Ricardo replied, looking directly at Clay. Clay was turning ashen. He had no idea where Ricardo had gotten that information, but it was uncomfortably close to the truth. And even worse, he was being exposed in front of his own wife, who, for some unfathomable reason, was pretending to be a foreign investor. Just then, Layla approached, looking clearly confused by Clay's prolonged absence. "Babe, the Japanese are asking where you went. They want to finalize the contract details." The silence that followed was deafening. Isla had just called Clay babe in front of Ricardo Mendoza and the mysterious investor. Even worse, she hadn't realized that the investor was, in fact, her lover's wife. Ricardo raised an eyebrow, clearly piecing together the situation. Jade maintained an expression of mild confusion, as if she didn't fully grasp the tangled personal dynamics she was witnessing. "Your secretary?" Jade asked Clay innocently. Clay was completely lost. How could he explain Isla without revealing the affair? How could he maintain the professional facade when his personal life was publicly imploding? "Actually," Isla said with a naive confidence that filled Jade with a strange mix of pity and irritation, "I'm Clay's business partner, and also, well, we're a couple." The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Ricardo couldn't suppress a satisfied smile. He finally had concrete proof that Clay was leveraging personal relationships to advance his business interests. And Jade smiled. It wasn't a warm or understanding smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally cornered her prey. "How interesting," she said, her voice still soft, but with an Arctic chill that sent shivers down Clay's spine. "And his wife? Does she know about this partnership?" The 5 seconds of silence that followed Jade's question felt like an eternity. Clay stood frozen, his hands trembling almost imperceptibly as he began to grasp the magnitude of what was unfolding. Isla, still oblivious to the investor's true identity, smiled with the wide-eyed naivety of someone who believed she had finally secured her place in the sun. His wife! Isla laughed, a brittle sound that sliced through the air like a funeral bell. Oh, Miss Montenegro, that's a complicated story. Clay is in the process of separating from his wife. She's a very simple woman. She doesn't understand anything about business, you know. She stays home, has no ambitions. She's not like us modern, independent women. Every word that came out of Isla's mouth felt like a dagger twisting in Clay's heart, as he watched in horror as his mistress single-handedly obliterated any chance of escaping this situation with even a shred of dignity. Ricardo observed everything with the keen interest of someone witnessing the spectacular downfall of their biggest competitor. And Jade. Jade kept her icy smile in place, preparing for the final, devastating blow. What an interesting perspective, Jade said softly. And tell me, miss, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Leila Herrera, the young woman replied, radiating pride. I graduated in business from the University of London and have been working as a strategic consultant for Clay Imports for a few months. Strategic consultant, Jade repeated, savoring each word. What impressive responsibilities for someone so young. Tell me, what kind of strategies have you developed for the company? Isla blushed, clearly unsure how to respond. Her role in the company was, in reality, purely decorative. She organized Clay's schedule, answered phone calls, and occasionally typed up reports that other people had actually prepared. Well, I help with the general organization of operations. General organization, Jade murmured, pretending to jot down mental notes. And the market analyses, the feasibility studies, the international contract negotiations? Leila's silence was more eloquent than any answer she could have given. Ricardo began to chuckle quietly, finally understanding that he was witnessing a slow-motion massacre. You know, Jade continued, her voice taking on a dangerous edge, it's interesting how family businesses sometimes work. Many times, the true strategist behind the success is someone working tirelessly behind the scenes, without any public recognition. Clay closed his eyes, knowing exactly where she was going with this. For example, Jade went on, discreetly pulling some documents from her handbag. I was reviewing some materials on Clay Imports before our potential partnership, and I discovered something truly fascinating. Most of the company's expansion strategies, the most innovative market analyses, and even the most lucrative contracts all seem to have been developed by someone with advanced legal training. Someone with a specialization in international business law. Ricardo leaned forward, completely intrigued. Clay tried to interrupt, but Jade continued relentlessly. But here's the interesting part. Officially, Clay Imports has never employed a full-time corporate lawyer. So, who developed these brilliant strategies? She paused dramatically, allowing the question to hang in the air. Unless, she continued, a mischievous smile playing on her lips, the true strategist was someone very close to Mr. Martin. Someone with intimate access to all the company's information. Someone who worked tirelessly behind the scenes without ever receiving any public credit. By now, a significant number of people around them had started paying attention to the conversation. Jade's voice, while still soft, carried an air of authority that naturally drew people in. Are you referring to someone specific? Ricardo asked, his curiosity piqued. I am referring, Jade said, her voice now laced with a chilling coldness that made Clay shiver. To Clay Martin's wife, Jade Adams, a woman with a law degree from the London School of Economics, with a specialization in corporate law from the University of Barcelona. A woman who abandoned a promising career to support her husband's dreams. A woman who spent the last 8 years developing every strategy, reviewing every contract, and analyzing every market opportunity that transformed Clay Imports from a small family business into a thriving import empire. The silence surrounding them was absolute. People had edged closer, drawn in by the palpable tension of the situation. Clay was as pale as a ghost, finally comprehending the full extent of what his wife had uncovered and meticulously planned. But you know what's most interesting, Jade continued, now addressing Isla directly, who was beginning to look deeply uncomfortable. It's that this simple woman who doesn't understand business is, in fact, the real architect of the success you now claim as your own. Isla looked nervously at Clay, pleading for support, but he remained paralyzed. Finally, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place in the young woman's mind. "Miss Montenegro," Clay finally managed to whisper, "can we talk in private?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, but I don't believe we have anything to discuss in private. As a potential investor, all my questions must be asked transparently." Just then, Helen approached the group, followed by two well-dressed men who Jade recognized from her meticulous preparations. Journalists from The Economist, London's most prestigious business publication. "Jade," Helen said, raising her voice so everyone could hear, "I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Thomas Restrepo and Mr. Carlos Vega from The Economist. They're doing a special report on international investors in the UK." The journalists greeted Jade respectfully, clearly impressed by her presence and eloquence. "Miss Montenegro, it's a pleasure to meet you. Could we ask you some questions about your investment plans in the country?" "Of course," Jade replied gracefully. "But I was just discussing some ethical concerns about certain local companies with Mr. Mendoza." "Ethical concerns?" Thomas Restrepo asked, his ears perked up. As an investigative journalist, he had a sixth sense for scandal. Ricardo, not one to miss the chance to throw dirt on his competitor, jumped in. "We were discussing the questionable practices of some companies in the sector, the use of privileged information, inappropriate personal relationships to gain competitive advantages. And," Jade added, her voice cutting through the air like a rapier, "the misappropriation of intellectual property." The words dropped like a bomb. Clay finally understood that there was no escape. His wife hadn't just discovered the affair. She had orchestrated his complete and very public destruction. "Intellectual property?" Carlos Vega asked, his journalistic antenna fully extended. "Yes," Jade replied, retrieving more documents from her bag. "I have evidence here that certain companies have systematically appropriated the intellectual work of unacknowledged collaborators, specifically spouses, who have contributed significantly to the development of business strategies without receiving any proper credit or compensation." She handed the documents to the journalists. "These are contracts, market analyses, and expansion strategies, all developed by an uncredited source, but which were publicly presented as original work by the company's management." Clay attempted to intervene. "Those documents are private. You can't." "Actually," Jade interrupted him, her Jade Montenegro mask finally crumbling, "I can, because all of these documents were developed by me, Jade Adams, your wife, the woman you just allowed your mistress to call simple and unambitious." The impact of the revelation was earth-shattering. Isla turned as white as a sheet, finally comprehending that she had just spent the last few minutes openly insulting the wife of the man she loved, a wife who had now revealed herself to be far more formidable than she could have ever imagined. The journalists began snapping photos and scribbling notes furiously. Ricardo laughed openly, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. And Clay sank into a nearby chair, finally accepting that he had lost everything. "Gentlemen of the press," Jade continued, now speaking with the authority of a seasoned executive, "I have a proposal for you. How about an exclusive interview about female intellectual property in the business world? I have a fascinating story to tell about how talented women are systematically erased from the very successes they help to build." "That would be fantastic," Thomas Restrepo responded instantly. "Can we schedule it for tomorrow?" "Perfect. And I assume you would also be interested in investigating the ethical practices of clay imports. I have extensive documentation regarding their questionable methods of obtaining contracts." While the journalists busily scheduled appointments and Ricardo eagerly offered additional information about his competitor's shady dealings, Isla finally summoned the courage to speak. You're really his wife?" Jade turned to her, with a look that was equal parts pity and contempt. "I am. Or rather, I was, because after tonight, I believe our marriage has definitely reached its end. I didn't know you were so smart, capable, powerful." "No, darling. You only believed the version of me that Clay wanted you to see. the simple wife who stays home and does nothing. Did it ever occur to you to wonder how a mediocre man like Clay managed to build a business empire all by himself? Isla couldn't respond. Tears began to stream down her face as the full extent of her naivete became agonizingly clear. Jade then turned her gaze to Clay, who remained silent and utterly defeated. As for you, my dear ex-husband, I hope you enjoyed your last party as the owner of Clay Imports, because starting tomorrow, when my lawyers file for divorce, you will find out exactly what percentage of the company legally belongs to me. She paused for emphasis. You see, for the past 8 years, I meticulously documented every contribution I made to the company, every strategy, every analysis, every contract. And according to the law, spouses are entitled to compensation for their intellectual contributions to family businesses. Clay's face drained of all remaining color. Oh, and by the way, Jade continued with a smile that was pure venom, Ricardo, I believe we discussed a possible partnership between your company and my future independent venture. That would be an honor, Jade, Ricardo replied, kissing her hand with genuine admiration. A woman with your intelligence and experience would be an extremely valuable partner. Jade turned one last time to Clay and Isla. Revenge, she said softly, is truly a dish best served cold, and you two have just been served. With that, she took Ricardo's arm and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of the life she had built with Clay and Isla's shattered dreams. Behind her, she could hear the flashes of cameras as they photographed the destroyed couple, and the increasingly aggressive questions from the journalists. Jade Adams had died that night. In her place, a stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous woman had been born, and her empire was just beginning. The party continued around them, but for Clay and Isla, the music had stopped forever. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed into the executive office on the top floor of the Shard, one of London's most prestigious buildings. Jade Montenegro, the name Jade had adopted professionally after the divorce, delicately adjusted her porcelain cup as she reviewed the financial reports of her new company, Montenegro Strategic Consulting. 6 months. Just 6 months had passed since that pivotal night at the Savoy, and Jade had built an empire that rivaled anything Clay had ever even dreamed of achieving. The secretary's phone buzzed in the adjacent office. Miss Montenegro, Mr. Ricardo Mendoza is here for the 10 a.m. meeting, announced Sophia, her executive assistant, an experienced and efficient 40-year-old woman, a far cry from the purely decorative secretaries favored by other executives. You can send him in, Sophia. And please, ask her to cancel my schedule after lunch. Ricardo has an interview for CNN International at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Jade smiled, thinking about how she had reached this point. The public humiliation of Clay that night had only been the first move in a far more intricate and fulfilling game of chess. Ricardo entered the office, as impeccably dressed as ever. But now, there was something different in his eyes that Jade recognized immediately. Genuine admiration and a hint of deference. He was no longer just a powerful businessman courting a potential investor. He was an equal partner acknowledging another equal. Good morning, Jade, he said, gently kissing her hand. The third quarter numbers are impressive. Our joint venture has exceeded all projections. Good morning, Ricardo. Please have a seat. We have a lot to discuss regarding the expansion into Colombia. As he settled into the Italian leather armchair, a piece of furniture she had personally selected to complement the minimalist and powerful decor of her office, Jade allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. The joint venture between Montenegro Strategic Consulting and Ricardo's companies had become one of the most lucrative partnerships in the British international trade sector. But the real pleasure didn't come solely from the financial success. It stemmed from the poetic justice of her own ascent being built upon the ruins of Clay's arrogance. Before we begin, Ricardo said, pulling a magazine from his executive briefcase, did you see the cover of The Economist this week? Jade smiled. How could I have missed it? Her photo occupied the entire front page of London's most influential business magazine, accompanied by the headline, Jade Montenegro, the strategic mind that revolutionized UK international trade. Asterisk the 8-page feature told the carefully crafted official story of her career. A brilliant lawyer, specializing in international business law, who had decided to launch her own company after years of working quietly behind the scenes as a consultant. The article emphasized her impeccable education, her innovative strategic vision, and her almost uncanny ability to identify burgeoning market opportunities before her competitors even caught a whiff of them. Of course, the article didn't mention Clay by name. It didn't need to. Everyone in the British business world knew. Those in the industry knew precisely how Jade Montenegro had acquired the experience and knowledge that now made her one of the most sought-after consultants in the country. "It's a decent article," Jade remarked modestly, "though I do think they might have stretched things a bit in certain areas." "Stretched things?" Ricardo chuckled. "Jade, in just 6 months, you've built a company that's already billing more per quarter than some traditional companies do in a whole year. You've transformed 3 family-run businesses into market leaders, and you've developed international expansion strategies that are being studied at universities. If there's any exaggeration, it's in your modesty." It was the truth. Ever since that pivotal night, Jade had channeled all her pent-up energy and sharp intellect into creating something truly her own. Every client she won over, every successful strategy she put into action, and every multi-million-dollar contract she finalized was a silent declaration of her real value. And the clients flocked to her. Businesspeople who had been familiar with her work behind the scenes at Clay Imports were finally able to directly hire the brilliant mind behind the strategies they had long admired. International executives, impressed by the market analyses produced by Clay's team, discovered that they could now collaborate directly with the actual author. Jade's phone gave a subtle buzz. It was a message from Carmen, her best friend and now the director of communications for her company. "Honey, you need to see this. I just got a call from Forbes UK. They want to include you in their list of the 30 most influential businesswomen in the country." The message continued, "And there's more. CNN UK wants to create a documentary about women who have transformed personal setbacks into spectacular business successes." Jade quickly typed a response. "Schedule the interviews. And Carmen, thank you for always being there for me." "Is it good news?" Ricardo asked, noticing her smile. "There's always good news when you're in control of your own narrative," Jade replied thoughtfully. "But let's get down to business. How are the negotiations progressing with the Colombian group?" They continued discussing expansion details and market strategies. Jade couldn't help but have a flashback to those dark days 6 months prior when she discovered the betrayal and felt as if her entire world had crumbled. What a naive woman she had been, believing that her life depended on Clay. What a colossal mistake she had made in diminishing her own dreams to prop up his. What precious time she had wasted being the perfect wife to a man who didn't even value her enough to acknowledge her publicly. But perhaps it had all been necessary. Maybe she needed to experience that humiliation to rediscover her own strength. Maybe she needed to be underestimated to learn to never underestimate herself ever again. The intercom interrupted her train of thought. "Miss Montenegro, Miss Helen Vasquez is on the line. She says it's regarding the launch event for your foundation." "Thanks, Sophia. Tell her I'll call her back in an hour." The foundation. That had been another project that was born from that traumatic night. The Jade Montenegro Foundation for Female Entrepreneurship had already assisted over 200 women in launching their own businesses. The focus was very specific. Women who had sacrificed their careers for marriages or relationships and now desired to rebuild their professional lives. Every story that reached the foundation echoed her own experience. Lawyers who became homemakers, engineers who put their projects on hold to support their husbands, and doctors who paused their specialties to raise children, only to discover that their husbands had moved on to younger companions. Jade had transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into empowerment for other women, and nothing brought her greater satisfaction than receiving calls from businesswomen who had rebuilt their lives with the assistance of the foundation. "Jade," Ricardo said, interrupting her thoughts. "May I ask a personal question?" "Of course. Do you have any news about him? Your ex-husband?" Jade paused, considering the question. Yes, she had news. How could she not? In the business circles of London, the world was small and gossip traveled fast. Clay had attempted to salvage his company after the scandal, But the combination of media exposure, the loss of crucial contracts, and the divorce proceedings, where Jade had legally proven her intellectual contribution to the business, had been devastating. Clay Imports was forced to declare bankruptcy just 3 months after that fateful night. He was now working as a sales manager at a mid-sized company, a position that represented a significant fall from his previous status as a successful businessman. People in the industry were well aware of his story. They knew that the empire he had built had, in reality, been built by his ex-wife. They knew he had traded a brilliant partner for a youthful fling. And Isla, poor Isla, had learned in the harshest way possible that being the other woman rarely ends well. Clay, feeling desperate and humiliated, had taken out his frustrations on the young woman he considered responsible for his downfall. The relationship ended after a mere 6 weeks, leaving Isla unemployed, disgraced, and with a ruined professional reputation. She was currently employed at a small accounting firm in the city's suburbs, far removed from the glamorous world she had thought she had conquered. "I have some information," Jade replied carefully, "but I prefer to concentrate on the present and the future. The past has already served its purpose." Ricardo nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in her words. "You are an extraordinary woman, Jade. Turning betrayal into triumph and humiliation into an empire is not something everyone is capable of. Any woman has that strength within her, Ricardo. Sometimes we just need an extreme situation to uncover it." The phone rang once again. It was Sophia informing her that the executives from the German company Hoffman Industries had arrived for the meeting regarding European expansion. Jade stood up, adjusting the blazer of a tailored suit that cost more than Clay's monthly salary. The click of her Louboutin heels echoed on the marble floor as she walked towards the door. "Ricardo, let's welcome our German guests. I have a proposal that will revolutionize our presence in the European market." As they walked down the corridor toward the main meeting room, Jade passed in front of the full-length mirror that adorned the wall. The woman who stared back at her was unrecognizable from the submissive and naive wife of 6 months ago. This Jade radiated confidence, power, and success. Her eyes shone with the sharp intelligence of someone who had learned to never underestimate her own worth again. Her smile held the serenity of someone who had turned her greatest defeat into her greatest victory. She was no longer the wife Clay was ashamed to introduce. She was the woman he could never win back. And contrary to what many people expected, Jade felt no bitterness or desire for further revenge. That night at the Savoy had been enough. Clay and Isla had received the consequences that their choices merited. Now, Jade was far too busy building her own legacy to waste time looking back. As she entered the meeting room, where the German businessmen respectfully rose to greet her, Jade Montenegro smiled. It wasn't a smile of revenge or superiority, but a smile of genuine satisfaction. She had proven something far more important than her ability to exact revenge. She had proven her capacity for rebirth, and that, after all, was the sweetest triumph of all. The meeting commenced, and Jade Montenegro, formerly Jade Addams, the hidden ex-wife, took her place at the head of the table as the CEO of one of the most respected consulting firms in London. The future had never looked so bright.